My name is Isabella Grant, but everyone calls me Bella. I am 34 years old, and last Tuesday my life flipped upside down when I checked a lottery ticket and saw that I had won $47 million. My hands trembled as I stared at those 6 matching numbers. Once the shock settled, one decision became clear. I would not tell a single soul about this money. You see, my family and money have always been a messy mix. That is why I knew silence was safer. If you are watching this, drop a comment about where you are tuning in from. And before I dive into this life-altering story, hit like and subscribe to hear more real tales about loyalty, betrayal, and revenge that may change the way you see your own family. Before that unforgettable Tuesday, my life was painfully ordinary. I worked as an accountant in a small marketing company in Seattle. My paycheck was enough to survive, but never enough to feel safe. My apartment was modest. Just 1 bedroom on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, but at least it was mine. Every morning, I woke up at 6, brewed coffee, and braced myself for another day, filled with bills and deadlines hanging over me like a shadow. The job was demanding, with 60-hour weeks turning into a normal thing, especially during tax season. My family situation, complicated does not even begin to describe it. My parents, Edward and Clara Grant, divorced when I was 14 and both remarried within 2 years. My father, Edward, a high school science teacher, married Vanessa, a real estate agent who loved expensive things and an even more expensive lifestyle. My mother, Clara, married Harold, a businessman who was far wealthier than my father, but also far tighter with money. I had 2 siblings. My younger sister, Emily, was 30 and had always been the golden one. She graduated from an Ivy League university, married a surgeon named Mark, and lived in a polished suburban home with 2 picture-perfect children. Then there was my older brother, Daniel, 36, smart and charming, yet always a drifter. He bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, borrowing money from family like it was his personal skill set. His pattern never changed. A desperate call, an emotional story, a promise to pay back, then silence until his next crisis. My extended family was just as tangled. My Aunt Sylvia, my mother's younger sister, was probably the only real soul in the family circle. She worked as an elementary school teacher, lived in a tiny apartment filled with books and plants, drove an old Honda that groaned at every corner, and somehow still showed up whenever it mattered. In complete contrast was my Aunt Catherine, my father's older sister. She married wealthy and never let anyone forget it. Holidays with her were filled with criticism and backhanded comments about my career, my small apartment, and my single status. Her son, Jacob, had inherited her sense of entitlement, but none of her money. Instead, he had a serious gambling problem that the family conveniently ignored. My past with family money made me wary. When Daniel needed $5,000 for rehab, I gave him everything from my savings, only to later discover he never even checked in. When Emily needed help covering her wedding costs, I charged $2,000 to my credit card, with the promise she would pay me back after the honeymoon. 5 years passed, and I was still waiting. When my father asked for help fixing his roof after a storm, I sent him what I could. A month later, I saw photos of him and Vanessa enjoying a vacation in Cancun. The only person who knew the weight of these betrayals was my best friend, Rachel. We met in college and stayed close through all the ups and downs. Rachel worked as a nurse, understood struggle, and never judged my bitterness about my family. She was my reminder that not everyone wanted to take advantage of me. At work, things were no better. My boss, Mr. Collins, loved to take credit for my ideas during meetings. My colleague Ethan always left early, dumped his workload on me, and somehow still got praised for my results. Despite being overlooked, I kept my head down, hoping someday it would change. Buying lottery tickets was my one small rebellion. Every Friday, I spent $10 at the corner store. My family laughed at me for it. My mother called it a tax for people bad at math. My brother joked that I should just hand him the money instead of wasting it. My father lectured me with probability charts, But those tickets gave me hope, even if the chance was tiny. A chance for freedom. Of course, I had dreams. I wanted to travel beyond the Pacific Northwest. I wanted to return to school and finally study something I loved. I wanted enough savings that a broken car would not send me spiraling into panic. But instead, I was still paying off student loans and carrying credit card debt that refused to shrink. Each month was a careful balancing act. I clipped coupons, memorized which store had the cheapest coffee, and drove my 10-year-old Corolla that rattled whenever it rained. I became skilled at pretending I was fine, while silently counting pennies in my head, deciding if I could accept an invitation out or if I had to invent an excuse. That was my life before everything changed. Ordinary, sometimes lonely, sometimes exhausting, but stable in its own way. Little did I know that a single slip of paper would tear apart everything I thought I knew about myself and my family. The day I bought the winning ticket happened to be my 34th birthday. I had just finished a long, draining week at work where Mr. Collins once again claimed credit for a financial strategy that I had worked tirelessly on, a strategy that saved a major client thousands of dollars. That evening, I stopped by Sam's Corner Market, just as I did every Friday, but this time with a small twist in routine. "Happy birthday, Bella," Sam greeted warmly as I stepped inside. He had owned the little store for more than 30 years. He knew every regular by name and always had a kind word ready. "Thanks, Sam." "The usual, please. And maybe one extra ticket for luck," I replied, sliding him $20 instead of my usual 10. "Birthday splurge, huh? Maybe today is your lucky day," he said with a wink, handing me the tickets. Normally I picked quick picks, letting the machine choose for me. But that day, I felt different. I carefully picked my own numbers. I chose my birth month and day, 3 and 16. My mother's birthday, 12. My father's birthday, 21. Aunt Sylvia's birthday, 9. And Rachel's birthday, 30. 6 numbers tied to the people who shaped my life, even those who had let me down. That night, I ordered takeout from my favorite Thai place, opened the bottle of wine Rachel had given me as a birthday gift, and settled into a quiet evening alone. The lottery drawing was scheduled for 8, but I barely paid attention. Instead, I scrolled through social media, watching friends and old classmates post pictures of far livelier birthday celebrations. Around 8:30, I casually picked up my phone and checked the numbers. I expected nothing. As always, the first number matched, 3. I smirked a little. The second matched, 16. My pulse quickened. The third, 12. Then the fourth, 21. My palms began to sweat. The fifth, 9. Now I was holding my breath. And finally, the sixth number appeared. 30. I froze. I blinked at the screen again and again. This had to be wrong. I checked the website twice. Then I turned on the TV and rewound the live drawing. My numbers appeared one by one on the screen. All 6 of them. I dropped the remote, my hands shaking so hard I could barely whisper, "No way. No way." According to the lottery website, I was the sole winner of $47 million. After taxes, it would leave me with about $28 million. For someone who had celebrated a 10% off coupon on laundry detergent earlier that day, it felt unreal. I did not sleep that night. Instead, I stayed up reading stories about lottery winners. Most of them were horror tales. Families torn apart by greed. Friends suddenly appearing with tragic sob stories. Winners who ended up bankrupt within 5 years. The lottery, one article warned, was the fastest way to lose everything you love. By sunrise, I had made my choice. I would claim the money, but I would not tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Emily. Not Daniel. Not even Rachel, at least not yet. That morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Then I made an appointment with Richard Hale, a lawyer who specialized in financial planning and estate law. His office sat in a sleek high-rise downtown. As I sat in the waiting room in my ordinary clothes, clutching my purse with the winning ticket inside, I felt like an imposter. "Miss Grant?" Richard greeted as he entered, extending his hand. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and calm. Intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. "What can I help you with today?" I swallowed hard and placed the ticket on his desk. "I need to know how to claim this without anyone finding out it was me." His eyes widened briefly, but he recovered quickly, nodding. "I see. Well, you have come to the right place." For the next 2 hours, Richard explained my options. In our state, lottery winners could remain anonymous by claiming through a trust. He detailed how to set up a blind trust, how the taxes would work, and how crucial it was to build a reliable team of financial advisors. "The biggest mistake winners make," he warned, "is telling too many people too fast. Once the word is out, you can never take it back." I nodded, relieved that my instincts were correct. I want to do this right. I do not want the money to destroy my life. When I left his office with a folder full of documents and a list of next steps, I felt a mixture of thrill and dread. I had more money than I had ever dreamed of. Yet I could not tell anyone. For the first time in my life, I was about to live a double life. Outwardly still the struggling accountant with a noisy Corolla. In secret, a multi-millionaire. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked closely with Richard to finalize everything. Together we set up the trust, claimed the winnings, and opened new investment accounts. He helped me design a financial plan that ensured I would never worry about money again, even if I lived past 100. The money was real now. It was in accounts under my name, safely guarded. Yet my daily life looked unchanged. I still dragged myself to work every morning, still argued silently with bills, still drove my beat-up Corolla that screeched in the rain. But the secret began to eat at me. I found myself wondering, what would my family say if they knew? Would they celebrate with me? Or would they see me only as a walking cash machine? The questions haunted me, and slowly, a daring idea formed. What if I tested them? What if I could find out how they would treat me in need, before I revealed my fortune? The plan sharpened one restless night as I stared at the ceiling. I would pretend to need help. I would create a story about losing my job and struggling with bills. Then I would ask each family member for financial support. The request would be the same for everyone. I would ask for $5,000. A large sum, but not impossible for them. And then I would see who stepped forward and who turned away. The very next morning, I returned to Richard's office to make sure my money was fully protected before launching this plan. He reassured me that the trust was solid, my investments were untouchable, and that I had more security than I ever imagined. "Everything is in order, Isabella," he said, sliding a folder across his polished desk. "Your financial future is safe. You could quit your job today if you wanted." The thought tempted me, but I shook my head. No, if I suddenly quit, they will ask questions. I need to keep my life looking the same. For now. That evening, Rachel came over for dinner. We sat on my tiny balcony, sipping wine as the city lights flickered in the distance. I could not hold it in anymore. I needed to share part of my plan with her. "I am thinking about running a little experiment with my family," I confessed carefully. Rachel raised her brow. "What kind of experiment?" "I want to tell them I lost my job, that I am drowning in bills, and I will ask for help, just to see who actually cares." Her expression shifted from curious to worried. "Bella, that sounds manipulative. Why would you do that?" "Because I am tired," I admitted, my voice sharper than I meant. "Tired of always being the one who helps, while no one is ever there for me. I want to know who would stand by me if I was the one in need." She set her glass down. "But lying to test people, that does not sound like you." I laughed bitterly. "What do you expect, Rachel? That I sit them down and ask them to be honest? You know how my family works. You have seen it yourself." She sighed. "Still, this feels wrong. What are you trying to prove?" "I just need to know who actually loves me and who just uses me," I said firmly, though inside I knew there was truth to her doubts. Rachel shook her head. "I know that look. You already made up your mind?" She was right. I had already rehearsed my story. I would tell them the marketing firm collapsed suddenly after a scandal. I would say I had no paycheck coming, that I was struggling to cover rent and medical bills. I would ask for $5,000, promising to repay as soon as I could. Rachel reluctantly helped me polish the details. You need to sound upset, but not so desperate that they doubt it. And be ready with details about the company's collapse. They will ask questions. I nodded. I will say the CEO was caught embezzling, that the company is under investigation. That explains the sudden closure and why I may not get paid. I will also say I have been applying for jobs, but nothing has worked out yet. That my emergency fund is drained because of medical tests. By the time we finished, my story sounded believable. Too believable. A small sting of guilt lingered in my chest, but I buried it. I reminded myself of all the times I had emptied my savings for these people, only to be left empty-handed. This was not just a test. This was self-protection. That night, I made a prediction list in my journal. My mother Clara would show some concern, but probably give less than I needed. My father Edward would lecture me about saving money, and maybe send a small amount. Emily would claim she could not help because of her kids' tuition. Daniel would refuse outright. Harold and Vanessa would dismiss me quickly. Aunt Catherine would mock me for my poor choices. Jacob would promise money, but never deliver. The only one I had real hope for was Aunt Sylvia. Even though she lived paycheck to paycheck, she had always been the most generous. But still, I forced myself to keep my expectations low. The plan was ready. One by one, I would reach out to every family member with the same plea. Only then would I know the truth. That night, with a trembling hand, I picked up my phone and dialed the first number. It was time to see who my family really was. I decided to start with my mother. Clara always boasted about being a nurturing parent, about how she sacrificed everything for her children. If anyone would step up for me, it would be her. My hand shook slightly as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice distracted. "Hi, Mom?" I said, making sure my voice carried the right strain. "Bella, you sound upset. What is wrong?" I launched into my prepared story, telling her how the company had suddenly shut down, how my paycheck vanished, how I was staring down bills I could not pay. As I spoke, her breathing changed, growing heavier with each detail. "Oh, sweetheart, that is awful," she said at last. "Have you applied for unemployment? What about your emergency savings?" I explained that unemployment would take weeks to arrive, and that my savings had been drained from medical tests. I let the words hang, leaving space for her imagination to fill in something serious. Finally, I said it. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but I need help. Around $5,000, just enough to cover rent and medical bills until I get back on my feet. I promise I will pay you back." There was a pause. A long pause. "Oh, Bella, you know Harold and I just put down a payment on the lake house. We are a little cash poor right now." Her voice carried a defensive edge. "Have you asked your father? Or maybe Emily and Mark, he makes good money at the hospital." I was hoping not to. I replied softly. "And Emily has the kids and their school fees." "Well, I will talk to Harold and see what we can do," she said finally. "But I cannot promise anything. You know how strict he is with money." I did know. Harold had never hidden the fact that he did not consider me his responsibility. His money was for my mother, and any children they might have had together, which they never did. "Sure, Mom," I said. "Please just let me know soon. Rent is due next week." "I will, honey. And I am so sorry about the job. But maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe it is a sign you should look for something more stable." After hanging up, I wrote down her response in my journal. Concern? Yes. Action? Doubtful. She had immediately pushed the responsibility toward others, a pattern I knew too well. The very next day, I met my father Edward for coffee. I chose a cafe downtown, thinking that in public he might be less harsh. "You look tired," he said as I sat across from him. I gave him a wary smile and dove into my story. He listened silently, occasionally nodding or frowning, but his eyes betrayed nothing. When I finished with my request for $5,000, he leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Isabella, I have always taught you about financial responsibility," he began, slipping into his teacher voice. "This is exactly why I told you to save 6 months of expenses. What happened to that plan?" "Life happened, Dad," I replied, struggling to keep frustration out of my tone. "Medical bills, car repairs. Not everyone can afford to tuck away that much." He sighed, a long disappointed sound. "And now you want others to bail you out. What about your spending? Do you really need that apartment in the city? Do you need those streaming services?" For 20 minutes, he lectured me about money, jobs, and the importance of living frugally. Not once did he offer help. I would love to help, Bella, but Vanessa and I are focused on our retirement right now. Dipping into that would be irresponsible. He patted my hand in a patronizing way. "This will be a good lesson for you. Sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way we learn." I nodded, fighting tears. Even though I expected this, it still stung. Next, I turned to Emily. I drove to her immaculate suburban home on a Saturday. Her husband Mark was away golfing, giving us privacy. "Bella, what a surprise," she exclaimed, ushering me in. "The kids are at swimming. Come, sit." Her kitchen was spotless, gleaming with granite counters and a commercial espresso machine. We sipped lattes as I explained my situation. "Oh, my God, that is terrible," she gasped, clutching my hand. "I cannot believe they just shut down like that. Poor you." For a brief moment, I felt hopeful. Her sympathy seemed real. Then I asked for $5,000. Her face changed. "Well, the timing is tough. We just bought the new Audi, and tuition was due. Plus, we are remodeling the master bathroom." She looked away nervously. "Mark handles most of the money, and he is very strict with our budget." "I understand," I said quietly. "I would not ask if it were not serious." She nodded quickly. "I will talk to Mark. Maybe we can help with a smaller amount. Or maybe you could stay with us for a while. The guest room is full of storage, but we can clear it." I thanked her, though I knew by the way she avoided my eyes that nothing would come of it. My brother Daniel was next. I decided to test him through a message first. I sent him a detailed text about losing my job, about struggling to cover rent and medical bills. His reply came quickly but short. "That sucks, sis. I am strapped myself. We'll call you later." He never called. I followed up with more texts. Silence. I tried calling, but every attempt went straight to voicemail. This was the same brother who had cried to me for help countless times. The same one who had borrowed thousands with promises of repayment that never came. Now, when I asked for help, he could not even answer the phone. The rejection hurt more than I cared to admit. When I reached out to my stepmother Vanessa, she did not even bother to fake sympathy. "Isabella, I am sure this is tough," she said in a clipped voice. "But Edward and I are not in a position to help. Maybe this will teach you better money habits. Have you thought about downsizing? Or getting a roommate?" I reminded her, gently, that I had helped them pay for repairs on their vacation cabin just last year. She bristled. That was different. That was for a family property we all enjoy. The fact that I had only been invited there once in 5 years apparently did not matter. When I finally called Harold, my stepfather, his response was even sharper. "You are not my daughter," he said plainly. "I have supported your mother for years. Your financial problems are your own. Maybe you should have chosen a career with a higher salary." His words struck me like a slap, even though I expected them. My cousin Jacob was no better. At first, he acted supportive. "Of course I will help," he told me. "Let's meet for lunch, and I will bring you a check." But an hour before we were supposed to meet, he texted that something had come up. He promised to reschedule. He never did. Eventually, he stopped answering me altogether. Then came my Aunt Catherine. Her words were as sharp as knives. "Well, Isabella, I always said that company of yours looked shaky," she said coldly. "I told your father you should have taken that bank job after college, But no one listens to me. Instead of offering help, she launched into stories about other relatives who had faced financial troubles and pulled themselves up without begging. By that evening, I learned that Catherine was spreading rumors through the family, telling everyone about my so-called irresponsibility. One by one, my experiment revealed what I had feared: excuses, judgment, avoidance, silence. A week passed, and I felt drained. 7 people I had once sacrificed for had shown me how little I mattered when the tables turned. Then, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sylvia. "Bella, honey, I just heard from your mom about the job," she said, her voice full of genuine concern. "Are you okay?" I had not even reached out to her yet. The fact that she called me first, before I even asked, meant everything. "I am hanging in there," I said softly, this time letting real emotion seep into my voice. "Listen," she continued, "can we meet for lunch tomorrow, my treat?" For the first time all week, I felt a flicker of hope. The next day, I met Aunt Sylvia at a small diner near her apartment. She looked exactly the same as always, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a simple ponytail, her cardigan mismatched with her jeans. She hugged me tightly before we sat down. "I am so sorry about your job, sweetheart," she said. "That company never deserved you anyway." Her warmth nearly cracked the wall I had built around myself. We ordered lunch, and as we ate, she asked thoughtful questions about my job search. She even offered to reach out to some former colleagues who might know of openings. Unlike the others, she listened, really listened. When the plates were cleared, she reached into her worn purse and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to take this," she said, sliding it across the table. "It is $3,000. I know it is not the full amount you need, but it should cover your rent." I stared at it in shock. "Sylvia, I cannot take this. It is too much. Nonsense. Family helps family." She reached across the table and took my hand. "And listen, if you need a place to stay to save money, my couch pulls out into a bed. It is not fancy, but you are welcome as long as you need." Tears stung my eyes. This time, they were not part of any act. "Thank you," I whispered. "Do not worry about paying it back anytime soon," she continued. "Get back on your feet first. And when you do, find a job you actually love. Life is too short to waste where you are not valued." As we left the diner, she hugged me again, tighter than before. "You are going to be all right, Bella," she said softly. "You are smart and capable. This is just a bump in the road." Driving home, I gripped the envelope in my lap. Inside was $3,000, more than I knew she could spare. Later, I discovered that Sylvia had been struggling with her own health. She had type 2 diabetes, and her medication costs had been climbing. She had even taken on tutoring jobs after school to make ends meet. And yet she had given me nearly all she had. Meanwhile, my mother, who had spent $8,000 renovating a bathroom, had told me she was cash poor. The contrast cut me deeper than any rejection. That night, I invited Sylvia to my apartment for dinner. As she settled onto my old couch, I noticed for the first time how tired she looked. "Sylvia, I need to tell you something," I began, setting a cup of tea in front of her. "What is it, honey?" she asked, curious. I did not lose my job. I blurted out. "The company is fine." I made up the story to see who in the family would help me if I needed it. For a long moment, she stayed silent. Then she nodded slowly. "I see," she said at last. "Are you angry with me?" I asked, my heart racing. She took a sip of her tea, her expression calm. "Not angry, maybe sad. Sad that you felt you had to test people this way. But I understand why you did it. Our family has not always treated you kindly. You were the only one who offered to help," I confessed. "Everyone else had excuses or ignored me," she sighed. "People reveal their true selves when giving becomes inconvenient. I learned that lesson the hard way." "What do you mean?" I asked, leaning forward. She folded her hands in her lap. "Do you remember my ex-husband, Robert? Do you know why we really divorced?" I shook my head. The family story was always vague. Something about growing apart. I inherited about $50,000 when my grandmother died. Robert immediately started making plans for it. Investments. Risky business ventures. I wanted to save it, maybe buy a little house. We fought for months. Then one day I discovered he had forged my signature and drained the account. Invested it all in a restaurant that failed within a year. My eyes widened. I never knew. The family preferred the growing apart story. It was less messy, she said with a sad smile. But I learned something. Some people see you as a resource instead of a person. It is a painful lesson, but an important one. I am sorry you went through that, I said softly. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Money does not just reveal who other people are, Bella. It reveals who we are too. How we use it, how we share it, how we guard it. It is a mirror. Her words sank deep into me. And in that moment, I made a decision. Sylvia, there is something else I need to tell you. I whispered. Something big. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $47 million. Sylvia's eyes widened, but she did not gasp or shout. She simply waited, letting me continue. I have not told anyone else. Not my parents, not Emily, not Daniel, not even Rachel. You are the first to know. She exhaled slowly. Oh, Bella. That is life-changing. I know. And that is why I tested everyone. I needed to see who would stand by me without knowing about the money. She nodded thoughtfully. I understand that. But what will you do now? That is the part I am still figuring out. The money is safe. I have good advisors, but I do not know how to handle the family. You do not owe anyone anything, Bella. Not even me, she said firmly. But I want to help you, I insisted. Your medical bills, a better apartment, whatever you need. She smiled gently. I do not need anything. My life is simple, but it makes me happy. I have my books, my students, my little apartment, and now I have this secret with you. That is enough. Her selflessness broke me. She had given me $3,000 when she had almost nothing. Now, knowing I had millions, she asked for nothing in return. Meanwhile, as Sylvia and I shared tea and quiet truths, the rest of the family was busy twisting my story. Word spread like wildfire. I received a text from my mother. Heard you asked Emily for money too. You should have told me you were asking everyone. Feels like you are playing us against each other. Then another from my father. Vanessa tells me you have been calling everyone for handouts. This is exactly the irresponsible behavior I warned you about. They had turned my request for help into evidence of my flaws, rather than a chance to show compassion. And in doing so, they revealed exactly who they were. The next morning, I met with Richard again to discuss long-term plans. I want to set up something for my Aunt Sylvia, I told him. Something that covers her medical bills and gives her a comfortable retirement. But it has to feel like a gift, not charity. She is proud. What can create a family trust? Richard said. It will pay her a monthly stipend, enough to ease her life, without overwhelming her with a large sum. That is perfect, I said. And I want to buy her a small house near wherever I end up. Nothing flashy, just safe and comfortable. We also discussed investments, charitable projects, and my own future. I decided it was time to leave my accounting job. I wanted to dedicate myself to building something meaningful. A nonprofit. One that would help elderly people living alone, inspired by Sylvia and others like her. Richard nodded approvingly. That is a worthy cause. Later that evening, I finally told Rachel the truth. At first, she stared at me in shock. What? You have been hiding this for weeks. Yes, I needed time to plan, I said softly. After a long silence, she nodded. I get it. Honestly, I understand why you kept it secret. Then she smiled faintly. So what now? Are you going to turn into one of those millionaires who still clips coupons and drives a car held together with tape? I laughed. No, but I am not going to throw money around either. I want it to mean something. To help people. Starting with Sylvia, Rachel raised her glass of wine. To Sylvia then. The one person who truly deserves it. Her words filled me with warmth. For the first time, I felt certain I was on the right path. I knew sooner or later, I would have to face the rest of my family. I could not keep avoiding them forever. But I also knew the truth about the lottery was not something I was ready to share. So instead, I decided on a different approach. I would call a family meeting, not to confess, but to confront. To clear the air about my so-called financial troubles, and, more importantly, to face them head-on. I sent out messages to everyone: my mother and Harold, my father and Vanessa, Emily and Mark, Daniel, Aunt Catherine, and of course Sylvia. I told them I had an important announcement and asked them all to come to my apartment on Sunday. When the day arrived, I was surprised to see them all show up. My mother and Harold arrived first, carrying the same stiff politeness they always wore. My father and Vanessa came next, her lips already pursed in judgment. Emily and Mark strolled in as though it were a casual social visit. Daniel appeared last, looking nervous but trying to act casual. Aunt Catherine swept in, with a frown carved deep on her face. And finally, Sylvia entered, giving me a small secret smile that steadied me. My apartment was too small for this many people, and they all seemed aware of it. Eyes darted over the worn furniture, the tiny kitchen, the cramped living room. The air was thick with judgment. I stood before them, heart pounding but voice steady. Thank you all for coming. I know there have been rumors about my financial situation, and I wanted to clear things up. My mother shifted uncomfortably. Daniel stared at his phone. Emily and Mark exchanged glances. The truth is, I continued, I am fine. I found a new job with better pay and benefits. I will be starting soon. Technically, it was true. I had appointed myself director of my new nonprofit with a modest salary. My mother exhaled with relief. Oh, that is wonderful news. We were all so worried. Faces around the room relaxed. They had come braced for another plea, expecting me to beg for help. Instead, they were handed good news. News that required nothing from them. So why all the drama? My father asked sharply. Why ask everyone for money if you already had something lined up? I met his gaze evenly. The job came through only recently. And when I thought I was in trouble, I reached out to family. That is what family is supposed to be for, right? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Well, we all have our own financial responsibilities, Vanessa said defensively. It is not always possible to help, even if we want to. Of course, I said calmly. We all make choices about our priorities. Then I turned to Daniel. Speaking of which, Daniel, I noticed you never responded to my messages, not even a call back. And yet, you had no problem asking me for $3,000 last Christmas to cover your rent. His face reddened. I was going through stuff. I did not have money to spare. A phone call would have been free. I replied coldly. The room shifted uneasily. For the next hour, I laid out the truth. Calmly, but firmly, I called out the hypocrisy, the excuses, the way they had turned their backs on me when I needed them most. Not one of them admitted fault. Not one apologized. Instead, they offered excuses, half-truths, and even tried to spin the blame back onto me. By the time they began filing out, the air was heavy with resentment. But I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I had spoken openly. I had faced them without fear. And I realized something. I did not need their approval anymore. The money had given me something far more valuable than wealth. It had given me courage. Sylvia stayed behind, helping me clean the cups and plates. You did well, she said softly. That could not have been easy. It was easier than I expected. I admitted. For the first time, I was not scared of their opinions. Because I finally see them for who they really are. She smiled warmly. That is a powerful realization. So, what happens next? I looked at her and smiled back. Next, we start looking at houses. For both of us. 1 year later, my life was unrecognizable compared to the day I first checked those winning numbers. I had moved into a modest but beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood. It had a small garden where I could drink coffee every morning, surrounded by flowers instead of traffic. Just 3 blocks away, Sylvia now lived in a cozy, single-story craftsman house, with wide hallways and easy access for the days her diabetes made walking harder. My nonprofit had taken root and grown beyond what I imagined. We provided companionship, home repairs, and financial support to elderly people living alone, especially those estranged from their families. Inspired by Sylvia's kindness, we had already helped more than 200 seniors in the city. Rachel had eventually joined as outreach coordinator, using her nursing experience to guide the program with compassion. She and I still shared our weekly wine nights, though now they took place on my new patio instead of my cramped old apartment. As for my family, things had shifted into a distant kind of relationship. I kept contact polite, birthday calls, holiday gatherings, but the illusion of closeness was gone. Without the weight of pretending, the interactions were easier, less painful. None of them knew about my lottery win. As far as they were concerned, I had simply found success through my nonprofit work, and the fact that they accepted that explanation without digging deeper told me everything I needed to know about their real interest in me. There were temptations to reveal the truth. When Daniel called asking for money for yet another business scheme, or when Emily complained about the cost of renovating her kitchen, part of me wanted to laugh and tell them I had millions sitting in the bank. But every time, I remembered their silence when I asked for help, and the choice became clear. Instead, when real needs arose, I helped quietly. When my father had a mild heart attack and unexpected hospital bills, I paid them anonymously through the Patient Assistance Fund. When Jacob finally entered rehab for his gambling addiction, I made an anonymous donation to cover his treatment. They never knew the source of those gifts, and I preferred it that way. Meanwhile, Sylvia thrived. With her medical costs covered and financial stress lifted, her health improved. She had retired from teaching, but volunteered at a children's literacy program 3 days a week, still sharing her love of books. One evening, we sat together on her porch, watching the sun sink low. "You know what amazes me most?" she said softly. "What?" I asked. "How differently all of this would have turned out if you had told them about the lottery right away." I nodded, considering it. The family would have suddenly become attentive, loving even, but it would not have been real. "And you would never have known the truth," she added. Her words stayed with me. Painful as my test had been, it gave me freedom. Sylvia was right. My so-called experiment had been painful, but it had also been eye-opening. It revealed who truly cared, and who only pretended when it was convenient. It showed me that most of my family valued me only when I was useful, when I could give. And when I had nothing to offer, they turned their backs. But it also showed me something even more important, that I had spent years giving away my worth, hoping to earn love from people who would never value me. Before the lottery, I defined myself by what I could provide. If someone needed money, I gave it. If they needed support, I sacrificed. And every time, I told myself that was what family meant. That was what love required. But Sylvia taught me something different. Real love does not keep score. Real love gives freely, without expectation of return. And at the same time, real love respects boundaries. It honors dignity. I had once believed money would corrupt my relationships. What I did not expect was how it would reveal them instead. The money did not change anyone. It simply exposed who they had been all along. My life now was richer than I had ever dreamed, but not because of the millions in the bank. It was because of purpose. Because of the bond I had with Sylvia. Because of the unshakable friendship I had with Rachel. And because I finally understood my own worth. Perhaps the most valuable thing I had gained was peace. The constant fear of bills and debt that had followed me for years was gone. But more importantly, the desperate need for approval from people incapable of giving it had vanished too. For the first time, I was building a life shaped not by insecurity or sacrifice, but by values and clarity. Sylvia reached over and squeezed my hand. "You did good, Bella. Not just with the money, but with how you grew." I smiled at her, gratitude filling my chest. I had a good teacher. As the sky shifted to shades of gold and pink, I thought back to where it all started. That one birthday ticket, the numbers that aligned, the night I whispered "no way" into my empty apartment. I realized the money had not ruined my life, and it had not saved it either. It had given me the power to see the truth and to choose wisely. And that was worth more than millions. The months passed quickly, and the nonprofit grew in ways I never imagined. What began as a small project inspired by Sylvia's struggles soon turned into a community movement. We partnered with local contractors to repair elderly homes, arranged volunteers to visit lonely seniors, and even created a fund for medical emergencies. Every success felt like a piece of healing, as if I was quietly rewriting my family's failures. Where they had abandoned me, I built something that would not abandon others. Rachel often teased me about being the practical millionaire. You could be out buying mansions and yachts. She laughed one night over wine. And instead you are organizing meal deliveries for 70-year-olds. I smirked. Maybe that is the point. I do not want money to change me into someone I hate. I want it to make me more of who I really am. She raised her glass. Then you are using it better than most people ever would. Still, the temptation to reveal the truth never completely disappeared. When Emily boasted about her new luxury vacation, when Daniel begged relatives for small loans, when my mother complained about being cash poor. While showing off her new jewelry, I sometimes wanted to shout the truth at them. But each time, I remembered their silence, their excuses, the way they had abandoned me in my supposed time of need. And every time, the urge faded. I realized something important. Keeping the secret was not about punishment anymore. It was about freedom. The distance gave me space to breathe, space to live without constant expectation. Yet I did not completely cut them out. I answered calls on birthdays. I sent cards at holidays. I listened politely to their complaints. And when real needs came, hospital bills, rehab fees, I sometimes helped quietly, anonymously. Because deep down, I knew I was not like them. Sylvia and I continued to grow closer. Twice a week, we shared dinners. She had more energy now, her health steady, her laughter light. She often reminded me that joy could be found in the smallest things. A good book, a blooming plant, a warm conversation. One evening, she turned to me and said, "You know, Bella, the greatest gift you gave me was not money. It was peace of mind. I can finally live without fear. That is priceless." Her words struck me harder than any compliment. Because in truth, she had given me the same gift. Sometimes I caught myself wondering what life would have been like if I had revealed the lottery win on day one. I imagined the sudden attention, the fake concern, the endless requests for handouts disguised as opportunities. My family would have turned into shadows of love, smothering me with affection that was never real. And I realized something. The secrecy had not only protected me, it had protected the money itself. Without the pressure of greedy voices, I had been able to build carefully, to invest wisely, to create a nonprofit that made an actual difference, to help Sylvia live without fear. Instead of the money ruining me, it had shaped me into someone stronger. I remembered the words Sylvia had shared that night over tea. Money is a mirror. She was right. The lottery did not change my family. It revealed them. It did not corrupt me. It reflected who I already was, and forced me to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The rest of my family still did not know. As far as they were concerned, I was simply thriving in a nonprofit career. They never asked too many questions, never cared enough to dig deeper. That truth alone told me everything. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer needed their recognition. I had built a life that finally felt like mine. And strangely enough, I felt grateful for the rejection, for the lies, for the excuses they gave me. Because without them, I might never have known who truly deserved to stand beside me. Sylvia and Rachel, two women who had given me loyalty without conditions. And in the end, that was all the family I really needed. The seasons turned, and with each passing year, I grew more certain that I had made the right choice. Sylvia's health stabilized with proper care. She no longer worried about whether she could afford her medication. She even started teaching part-time again. Not for the money, but because she loved the work. Children filled her life with laughter, and she often came home with stories that made us both smile. Rachel blossomed in her new role with the nonprofit. Her compassion and drive brought us more volunteers, more donations, more reach. Together, we watched our work touch lives we had never imagined. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Sylvia and I sat on her porch. She leaned back in her chair and said, "You know, Bella, I still think about that day you told me the truth. About the test, about the money. I know it must have been hard to keep all of that bottled up." I nodded slowly. It was. But looking back, I am glad I did. If I had told them right away, I would never have known what was real. She gave a soft smile. Sometimes the hardest truths are the ones that set us free. Her words lingered in the air as we watched the sunset paint, the sky in pink and gold. I realized then that my story was not about winning the lottery. It was about discovering myself. The money was powerful, yes, but it was not the miracle. The miracle was the clarity it forced me to see. I had once believed that love meant sacrifice. That family meant giving until you had nothing left. But now, I understood better. Real love was not about what you gave. It was about who stood beside you when you had nothing to give. And that truth was worth more than any jackpot. As the nonprofit grew, I began to notice something else. My family, though distant, occasionally reached out when they thought I might be useful. Emily would drop hints about how expensive her renovations were. Daniel would float half-baked business ideas, suggesting I could invest. Even my mother would call, not to ask how I was, but to complain about how Harold kept her on a tight budget. I listened politely, offering nothing more than sympathy. And each time, I felt stronger, because for once, I was no longer the one being drained. Privately, I still helped when the need was genuine. When my father's medical bills piled up after his heart scare, I covered them anonymously. When Jacob finally entered rehab, I sent money through a donation fund without attaching my name. I did not need recognition. I only needed the comfort of knowing that when it truly mattered, I did the right thing. Sylvia often reminded me of this. "You are breaking the cycle, Bella," she said one evening as we prepared dinner together. "You are showing that generosity can exist without conditions, without strings. That is a rare gift." Her words filled me with quiet pride. Because for the first time, I was not giving to earn love. I was giving because I chose to, freely, with no expectations. And as strange as it sounded, the rejection I faced had been the greatest gift of all. Without it, I would have never seen the truth. Without it, I might have thrown away millions on people who never deserved a cent. The lottery had tested my family, but it had tested me too, and I was proud of the person I had become on the other side of it. As the years passed, I found peace in ways I never expected. The constant stress of money was gone, but so was the ache of trying to earn love that was never real. My life became simple, purposeful, and full of people who truly cared. Sylvia and I had dinner together at least twice a week. Her health was steady, her laughter easy. She had everything she needed, and more importantly, she had freedom. Rachel and I built the nonprofit into something bigger than either of us imagined. Hundreds of seniors now had support, companionship, and dignity because of the work we had started. Every success reminded me that money only has meaning when it is used to create something good. My family remained on the edges of my life. We spoke on birthdays and holidays, but the closeness they once pretended to have was gone. And strangely enough, I preferred it that way. There was no more pretending, no more false hopes, just distance and peace. Sometimes I thought back to the night it all began, sitting alone in my apartment, staring at 6 numbers that changed everything. I remembered the trembling hands, the whisper of no way. And I realized that winning the lottery was never the real story. The real story was learning who I was when everything was stripped bare. The money did not save me. It revealed me, and in the end, the most valuable thing I gained was not millions of dollars. It was clarity. Clarity to know that the people who truly deserve a place in your life are not those who come running when you have everything to give, but those who stay when you have nothing to offer but yourself. So I ask you this: have you ever tested someone's loyalty? Have you ever discovered who stood beside you when you had nothing left? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more true tales that might change the way you see the people around you. And remember, your worth is not measured by what you can give. It is measured by who stays when you have nothing